Bleach, one of the big three mangas, has finally come to an end. You guys may not know it, but I was probably one of the biggest Bleach fans out there. I do say that in past tense just because my interest in it did start to go down after the anime came to an end. I did go ahead and keep up with manga every now and then, every few months. I did happen to hear about all the issues that it was having, about it being rushed, and then just suddenly coming to an end. I went ahead and spent the last week or so reading the entire 1,000-Year Blood arc. Yeah, that's about 200 chapters, about 4 years of the Bleach manga. The reason I wanted to do this is just because, well, Bleach has been a huge influence for me, so I just wanted to give my closing thoughts about the ending. Let me first go ahead and give a little bit more background. I mentioned that I was a huge Bleach fan. I just want to emphasize that this is specifically about the Bleach anime. I think I first started watching Bleach early on in high school, maybe a decade ago. What originally got me into Bleach was actually watching Naruto on Cartoon Network. You guys might know how Cartoon Network works. They showed about one new episode a week. I couldn't wait, so I just started watching Naruto online, the sub-Japanese version. Eventually, you guys might know what happened. I hit the filler territory. Someone back then suggested that I check out Bleach instead, and that was pretty much it. I never really looked back. At that time, the Soul Society art from Bleach was one of the best things I've ever seen. It was this crazy story that involved Shinigami and this kid Ichigo that was suddenly thrown in right in the middle of all of this. Eventually, we know what happens with Rukia. Based on what Rukia did with helping out Ichigo, she gets a death sentence. Just like that, we go on this adventure with Ichigo and his friends to save Rukia. I remember finding that pretty admirable. He couldn't just let this person get executed for having saved him and his family. Anyway, that was the Soul Society arc. I do acknowledge and am completely aware that there's a lot of issues with Bleach, mostly after the Soul Society arc. Just to further show how much I was into Bleach, I think I watched the whole Bleach series at least once a year, minus fillers. The funny thing about that is that mostly I was watching this at the gym when I was at the university. It was a perfect way to pass an hour. At this time, you guys may know that I have graduated, so it's been a while since I've seen Bleach. But I still do have a lot of the Bleach opening songs on my phone. I still find them to be pretty great songs to get me in the zone when I'm doing my weight workout at the gym. I mentioned that I spent the last week or so catching up with about 200 chapters of Bleach. Even while I was reading all these chapters, in my head I kept on hearing the voices of these characters. And not just the voices, also the sound effects from the anime. Anyway, that's an abridged background of Bleach for me. Let's now go over my thoughts of this whole final arc. I decided to break this into the 5 best and worst things, no particular order. I went ahead and chose this format because, well, otherwise this video would be a few hours long, mostly with the worst things. Here are the best things first. Let's begin with the Zero Squad. I honestly had trouble picking out the 5 best things to fill this list. I think the Zero Squad deserves some mention. There were some hints here and there about the Zero Squad sprinkled around the series. We all imagined that they had to be some big deal. When we saw them finally revealed in the manga, I was a little underwhelmed. I eventually ended up warming up to them. I really enjoyed how Ichigo and Renji had to travel around to each of their different houses. It reminded me back when I was watching Dragon Ball Z over a decade ago. It was basically them getting some training from these godlike figures. After all, these guys needed to be at their best to fight against this opposing Quincy army. I really only wish we ended up getting more of them. There just wasn't enough for me. We don't even know what became of them at the very end. Next up, the truth about the Kenpachi title. This was actually one of the few developments I really liked about this final arc. We found out about Kenpachi holding this self-imposed, subconscious limit to himself. It totally makes sense when you look at some of the past battles that involve Kenpachi throughout the Bleach series. Kenpachi even went further to limit himself by having that eye patch, and also those bells in his hair early on. Once the secret was revealed, it pretty much seemed to come all together. Up next, the Captain Commander Bankai. The mystery of his Bankai was something that everyone had theories about for years. We didn't even see him busted out during the Aizen fight. This could only mean one thing: it was way too destructive. It turns out that was literally the case. Yamamoto's Bankai basically brought hell upon the Soul Society. It was so overpowered too. It had 4 forms or abilities to it. Unfortunately, the old Captain Commander got screwed over. It was such a bullshit way with how the Captain Commander died. Next up, another Bankai, or Bankai Upgrade I should say. I always had this feeling that Renji got screwed over when it came to people that had a Bankai. It eventually was like this running joke that he just had to show up in battle and instantly go into his Bankai. Sure, Ichigo and Toshiro did it too, but at least those Bankais were useful. When Renji did it, it was like, the opponent could just quick step away at any time. With this final arc, finally Renji got the Bankai that he truly deserved. It just sucks that we didn't get to see it too much, but when we did see it, it was pretty satisfying seeing Renji get that power up he deserved. For the final best, another Bankai, Rukia's. If you had to ask me about my favorite characters in Bleach, I think Rukia would be my top 3. That's why I was really happy to see when Rukia finally said the word Bankai. It actually didn't even occur to me that she'd possibly get one before Bleach ended. It was also right after she displayed that new sword ability of hers too. My only complaint is similar to Renji's. We only briefly saw it. They did hint in this final arc that Rukia and Renji were going to be playing a bigger deal in the final battle, but because of that time crunch, it never happened. I do remember thinking back to that panel where Tsukishima appeared. At that moment, I actually thought that it was Rukia that had stabbed Ichigo in the back. It was almost like, here we go again Ichigo for a third time. It might have been a little bit too cheesy though. I just wish we had gotten to see Rukia more in action, Bankai or not. At least the cherry on top for me was that Kubo actually dedicated some time to showing off that Rukia had become a captain. Alright, so now for the top 5 worst things in this final Bleach arc. As much as I said that I liked the early development for Zaraki Kenpachi, I really didn't like that they kept on pushing it. Kenpachi was originally shown to us as that Shinigami that only relied on his own potential in fights. It was up to that point where Kenpachi couldn't even hear his own sword. Kenpachi's sword also happened to be a full-time release sword, similar to Ichigo's at that time. Fast forward to the 1000-year final arc. I really would have preferred that they just removed Kenpachi's limiters and just ended it right there. I'm not sure if it was strictly that Kenpachi got a Shikai, and later on just holy frack out of nowhere, Bankai too, or just how they were used, but I really didn't like this whole situation. I mean, let's go ahead and look back at it. We first see Kenpachi bust out his Shikai to destroy that meteor. This is freaking Kenpachi. This guy could have destroyed that thing with his fist. One Punch Man style. As for the Bankai, it was pretty much just some Kenpachi devil form. I wish that Kubo had just thought of a different reason for Kenpachi to go into that form. It could have been something like some form that was only accessible to the true Kenpachi, or something around those lines. Despite me really disliking Kenpachi having a Shikai and Bankai, the more I thought of it, I actually did end up liking the reveal of what Yachiru really was. Sure, it didn't really completely make sense of how she was a lieutenant, and even had her own sword and Shikai, but whatever. Next up, the 4 elite Quincy battles and some of the new Bankais. In this final arc, we got a lot of battles between the Quincy's. The most important ones revolved around these elite Quincy's. First off, there was that left hand of the Soul King that turned into a Quincy? Again, something that wasn't explained. At the start of it, it was a little interesting only because it added some fuel to the questions about what the Soul King really was. Just looking back at this is probably my favorite battle, just because he was up against a mad scientist. The captain's so despicable. It's hard not to love seeing him do what he does. There was also that Thor Quincy. The only slight what the frack moment was him revealing that he was the Soul King's heart? What? For the 3rd elite Quincy, we have the sniper dude. We had this guy fighting the new Captain Commander. The fight between these two started off pretty interesting. This guy was supposed to represent modern warfare, hence the sniper. The added bonus on top is that this guy was able to pierce through anything, and he later got that immortal light form. It then just became completely stupid when he became that evil god chicken. Really, Kubo? That's the best you could come up with? Finally, there was the lethal dose Quincy. It was honestly mostly forgettable. The only good part was the cat Yorichi form, Urahara's Bankai, and the Grim Joe cameo at the very end. I ended up having a lot of similar complaints about these fights, and a lot of the other battles too. A lot of these ended up being pretty long battles. They just went on forever, on and on and on. Especially the Thor Quincy and the God Chicken fights. I remember just thinking to myself, please, stay down. Fracking die already. For a lot of these battles, it was also pretty hard to make out at points what the hell was going on. A lot of these battles involve captains showing off their Bankai for the first time, or just showing some new form of it. A lot of these were just quickly rushed through, and some of the Bankai just seemed pretty half-assed cause of this. Oh yeah, and also honorable mention for Byakuya who got revived. He got that super healing at the Soul Palace. There was all this setup to see a badass battle with him. But nope, we don't got the time, so screw it. Sorry, Byakuya. Let's now talk a little bit about Ichigo's new form and also that Bankai of his. Before getting into this, let's see what led up to this in the first place. In the Fullbrink arc, we saw Ichigo get an updated form for Zangetsu, both Shikai and Bankai form. At almost the start of this new Quincy war, Ichigo gets his sword broken. This is later then fixed by the sword Zero Squad dude. Yay, we got Ichigo with dual blades now. Honestly, I wasn't really a fan of this. They seem to have given Ichigo this small blade for no apparent reason. I was waiting to see if this was going to be functional in any way, but nope. If they wanted to give Ichigo two swords, they should have just made them the same size. Now, fast forward to Ichigo facing off versus the Quincy Godfather. Shinigami, Quincy, and Hollow Powers all combined. We got this at the end of chapter 675. It was such an awesome way to end it. I was thinking, alright, this is where Ichigo starts kicking some old Quincy ass. Next chapter, we even get a new move from Ichigo. A combined Getsuga Densho with a Gran Rei Seto. As soon as Ichigo goes into Bankai, instantly, sword freaking broken again. It's gone instantly. Yu Havok even screws with Ichigo even more. He breaks off his freaking hollow horn and chucks it back at him. I honestly felt pretty embarrassed for Ichigo. I think the only way you could have made it worse was if you actually killed Ichigo with that horn, or just stabbed him in the stomach or something like that. Now for some of the big stuff in this final arc. There's the main villain, Yu Havok, the Soul King, and to some extent the Zero Squad too. I think all these three go hand in hand. For Yu Havok, this was this S-class villain that kind of appeared out of nowhere. Even stronger than Aizen, I think. As for the Soul King, this was this entity that was mentioned every now and then throughout the series. I always pictured the Soul King to be this Captain Commander figure leading the Zero Squad. Instead, it turns out that the Soul King was basically a glorified statue. Yeah, Aizen, is this what you wanted? You basically ended up getting the same thing stuck in that chair anyway. The whole deal with the Zero Squad and the Soul King was never really fully explained. We only got that half-assed reason for why Yu Havok wanted to kill it. Ironically enough, it seemed that he became the Soul King for a short period. Yu Havok did mention something about the Soul King being his father. I'm not sure whether this was literal or not. It seemed like Yu Havok himself was some type of Jesus figure. There was this theory that the Quincy's did originate from the Soul King, and hence did all have some of the Soul King's power. After the time jump, we don't even know what became of the Soul King or the Zero Squad. Is the Zero Squad alive? Did they ever find a new Soul King? Maybe they just stuck Aizen in his chair up there. It was what Aizen wanted anyway, and he's immortal. Just imagining Aizen up there in his chair is pretty funny. The final one, the ending relationships. I'm sorry, but I gotta mention it. I really hate the ending pairings. I know, it's pretty petty. But I always favored Ichigo ending up with the Rukia. It's not even that I hate or just dislike Orihime. I know Orihime always had this thing for Ichigo, but I never really saw it working out. It always seemed like a one-sided crush anyway. At least from what we saw in the anime, there wasn't a lot of chemistry between Rukia and Ichigo. It just seems like these two would be a better fit at the very end. Sure, that would mean that Renji would get a little screwed over and not get Rukia. But at least for me, it seemed that Renji and Rukia were more like sister and brother at this point. I also wonder what was Byakuya's reaction to all of this. This might have been where Byakuya got to unleash his full upgraded Bankai. If Ichigo had ended up with Rukia, that would have left Orihime with Ishida. Instead, Ishida got left forever alone. Anyway, I'm actually getting pretty sad thinking about how Bleach is over now. Like I said earlier, I really fell in love with what the anime brought. Not necessarily the manga. It doesn't seem like there's much hope for the manga being turned into an anime at this point. An anime usually falls into one of two camps, either being an advertisement for the manga or for toys and other merchandise. In the case of Bleach, that was mainly the manga. Seeing how Bleach got rushed and probably cancelled, I just don't see that happening. What would they even do with the Bleach anime anyway? They could fill the Bleach anime with some sort of canon filler. It then wouldn't even serve as an accurate advertisement for the Bleach manga. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I was such a huge Bleach fan. After seeing the final arc, I'm not sure if I'd be too sad if it didn't return after seeing what a mess it became. It's just a shame, really, what happened to Bleach at the very end. I remember how Bleach used to be described as Dragon Ball Z with swords. It's just ironic now that Bleach has ended and Dragon Ball Z is still continuing. I think we could all agree that Bleach deserved a lot better. I know there's a lot of people out there that like to say that Bleach should have ended once Aizen was sealed. I don't agree with that. Saying that really doesn't cover the whole issue. In the end, Bleach turned out to be a lot of great ideas, just not necessarily put together in the best way possible. Let me go ahead and say a final thank you to Bleach for all the years of joy and entertainment it brought us. So then, let me know your thoughts and feelings about Bleach coming to an end. Were you a big fan like I was? Did you not care? Are you more of a Naruto fan? I really don't think that anyone is happy with how the series came to its conclusion. Let me also take this time to ask you guys what you guys thought about this review format. I'm playing around right now with expanding content for this channel in the near future. I'll likely be playing around with how I do upcoming reviews to see what works and what doesn't. So, let me know about that down below. If you made it this far, you really should subscribe. And I'll see you guys later.